Dude. Oh, my sound's not
Wait,
working.
I gotta change my.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Wait, can you? Oh,
I
there
can
we
hear you.
go. Okay, I was like, what? You were muted. That's how high I am right now. What's up?
What's up, dude?
What's up, man? It's lovely to see you, man. How you living?
Dude, I've been good, man. I've been busy though. I've just been grinding a bunch.
No,
Haven't been posting too much online, but I'm setting up a VC fund right now, so it's been kind of hot and heavy the past 2 months.
that's fucking awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. And I'm curious to get the update with you too.
I'm trying to cook a little bit on my own. I'll be honest with you, man. I reached a wall very recently where I was like, dude, I've applied to so many jobs, I've interviewed, I've done so many proposals, and I've just not landed anything. So I've been trying to work on some stuff on my own just to make some money, doing some small things here or there. I'm doing a small thing
Yeah.
from McCormick right now. I'm talking to Breedlove about doing something, just a small little project with him just to make shit. But that's fucking dope, man. Not gonna lie, definitely an area that I've been very intrigued and interested in for sure.
Oh, no shit. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's cool, man. I feel like there's a ton of opportunity in this part of the industry, and I feel like there's quite a bit of room for growth in it too. And it's kind of like just like with all things, it's like what comes first. It's kind of a chicken or the egg problem. Does the capital come first? Do the companies come first? And it's like, if you build, they will come. And I think that there's going to be a big piece of that. But yeah, man, it's cool. I'm excited, but we're getting into fundraising here in the next month, and yeah, just gonna be a grind. Just been grinding. So I haven't been following any news or anything. So I'll need you to like guide this whole conversation. I think I just lost you on the sound too, by the way.
Can you hear me all right?
Oh wait, no, there you are now. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just
You're just muting. Okay.
yeah, I'm just fixing this real quick. Uh totally.
Yeah. So yeah, man. But this is cool. I like this.
I did not realize this, but for some reason we're live right now.
Fuck yeah, dude. We're live.
All right. I guess we are live right now. But that is our intro to Late Night Bitcoin. This is season 2. We are back, and I'm joined by my dear friend Eric Yakes, pronounced Yakes.
Yakes.
Every letter. I'm loving the red light district ambiance for those who are watching on video, man. How goes it in mom's basement?
Oh, dude. So it's actually an open sign that mom got for me.
Okay,
So when
nice.
the blue and the red combine, it looks kind of like a pinky hue. So we're still in business. Open sign's still on.
I love that. I love that. While we're on, the topics we've been discussing, I am so sorry that we've been live this whole time. If you want me to shut the fuck up, or if you want to ask right now, because we have plenty of people who are founding and building, who are listening and watching, like, what is it you guys are looking for? What are you looking to try to invest in and find in Bitcoin? Or we can skip this question outright.
Oh, wait, hold on. Was that to me?
Yes.
Oh, my bad. I thought you were like posing that to like people in chat or something like that. Dude, okay. Yeah, let me talk about that. So like there's quite a bit of opportunity that I think is going to emerge when you think about I guess in an oversimplified way, the whole like layered architecture of the Bitcoin ecosystem coming to play. And it's like, okay, so if Bitcoin is this thing that is going to scale to, some very large amount, it's going to consume the market of money. And that's huge. And there's a ton of upside that you can get from that. And there's, most investments probably aren't going to outperform that. But given the fact that Bitcoin's already achieved a pretty high scale, means that, startups that you're investing in that haven't achieved any scale, you're getting it at a pretty low price if they ever do consume something. So, like when you think about this new digital monetary system, and we have these new forms of like financial applications that'll probably emerge, as well as like financial intermediaries or all these other different service providers that are going to be enabling the whole ecosystem to function. um, there's going to be an opportunity to make quite a bit of money from startup investing in this, I think, in the long term. And I think a lot of people go back to like, do you want to own Bitcoin or something? Well, it's kind of just a different investment in general, right? Like you own Bitcoin because you want to have control over your assets and you don't want to have anything that people can take from you. Venture capital is completely different from that, but it begets more Bitcoin investment as we build out things that make Bitcoin more valuable because they have a supporting ecosystem of goods and services around it. So I mean, there's a ton of different things that I could ramble on about in terms of like direct technologies, but like that's kind of the overarching idea, is that the returns are going to be very high when we see what some of these new like decentralized social media companies are going to be, or what the next financial application that becomes like the next Bloomberg terminal emerges. And there's going to be all these things that I think get replicated from our traditional system in this new system that are going to be a lot more efficient. And and it's going to be really cool, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
I also think there's a really excellent point that you kind of allude to, in that, like, while Bitcoin itself is, our form of holding our monetary value for ourselves, what you're doing is helping to advance the accelerate, or at least accelerate the adoption, the use cases, the potential ways that you and I and others who aren't even thinking about Bitcoin can start to interact with it on a daily and regular basis. So
Right.
I love that, fully support that. And at the end of the day, like, there are different ways to be building Bitcoin, and it doesn't just have to literally be coding. It can be through investing and helping those who are trying to build a resource on the Bitcoin network, helping them in any way.
Exactly, man. Like that's the whole point, is what enables people to go out there and code? Money. And people need to live and they need to survive, and people need to be compensated for building things. And the more capital that we can attract to this industry can enable a much more thriving ecosystem. I mean, that is one of the major advantages that like crypto had, for example, is because of we could talk for a while about the problems with how the financing of crypto worked and the short-term incentives and all these things. But nonetheless, the fact that they were able to deploy a ton of capital into that side of the ecosystem very quickly, that brought a ton of developers into that side of the ecosystem. So like that, we need to deploy more capital. We need to get more devs building these projects. There was a lot of like valuable ideas that have emerged in crypto that I think ultimately are just going to get replicated on top of Bitcoin in some form. But yeah, I think that it's a chicken or the egg problem. I'm a finance guy. I worked in private equity before, where we were doing like later stage investing. So I was like, yeah, this is a skill set I can bring to the industry. And it's what I care about the most too, man. Like, I feel like the biggest questions are kind of like predicated upon what's going to get built on top of Bitcoin. When I think about like, where is this industry going to be? And I try to dig into that. It's like, well, how does it scale? And what are these other layers going to be? And what are going to be some of the most viable technologies that emerge from that? And yeah, it's like, it's what, captures my interest, because it's going to determine the future of so many different things. Ultimately, how this system builds out.
Absolutely, man. And you kind of allude to it a little bit, and I'm curious first on your thoughts. Just, you know, crypto, and I use that word intentionally. Crypto investment firms have gotten a very bad rap, especially within the Bitcoin community, over the course of, I'd say, the last 12 months. The chickens come to roost right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think, because I understand what you're trying to do, because Bitcoiners will understand this isn't a crypto fund. This is a Bitcoin fund focused on Bitcoin businesses. But for those outside of this space, we have unfortunately just constantly get lumped in. So when you have a conversation with someone who's not necessarily familiar with just the simplest of nuances, which is it's Bitcoin, not crypto, how do you sort of try to help them understand that Bitcoin is vastly different than crypto?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, I guess generally speaking, the best way I try to do that is I usually like kick the conversation off with the person and kind of like obviously it's contextual, but like if I don't know this person at all, if I'm at like a party or something and I bump into someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, he does, something in crypto." Like friend says that, then I'll kind of like talk with them a little bit about it. And like I always start with trying to like get their opinion on all of it because pretty much everybody has an opinion on this industry, and then that kind of helps tee me up to like respond more appropriate to what their concerns are about all of it. But like I guess like generally speaking, the way that I always break it down, I don't like it as much because what I have to do is I have to like, talk shit about what's gone wrong. But I'd say the first thing I'd say is like, yeah, there's some pretty interesting ideas that have emerged, but it's like a very nascent industry. And, it's like the open protocols are the ones that ultimately win. And basically, we had these perverse incentives that existed that attracted a lot of capital and had all this get built out because of the ability to issue a token. The ability to issue a token and like circumvent SEC registration is a pretty valuable thing that capital providers love. So like in the venture capital model, right? You go raise money from investors, you go invest it into companies, and it's typically a 10-year time horizon until they get all their money back, if they do. And that's the returns are much higher, but you have to wait a long time to get those returns back in private markets. So like that's kind of one of the fundamental trade-offs. So like when crypto hit the market and these crypto funds were like, look, you can invest in us and we're going to get liquidity from these tokens that we can sell openly on the market, and we don't have to go through any form of like SEC registration. Within a 2-year timeline, they kind of like really changed the game for how some of these models work in venture capital. And it kind of like took the hedge fund model and like merged it into venture capital. So by applying that like public equity type issuance model to it, that was compelling to investment, and that just brought a lot of investment in. And there's a lot of ways that that went wrong too. But like broadly speaking, it's like I'll start off with just saying like, the reasons why people are investing in that side of the industry aren't as sustainable. And then it comes down to a question of, okay, well, when that goes away, which it actually hasn't completely because a lot of money was raised before all this shit happened in crypto. But whenever it does, what's going to be the actual value and not just things that are being systematically like supported through more capital raising all the time. And I think that and then that's when you get into the conversation around Bitcoin. And then you're like, okay, this thing's real, it's unstoppable, and there's going to be technologies that support it. It's already won the money aspect of this whole system. And then the last point, and this is an even more interesting point, I don't necessarily think that like this whole idea of like DeFi is even ever really going to fully become a thing. I think that there's valuable like technologies that emerge, but I think kind of like fundamental to like most of finance, there's certain functions that you can automate within like forms of like exchange and things like that. But broadly speaking, when we're talking about like lending, equity investment, insurance markets, any form of like moving value across time and trying to measure that risk and having people pay a price for it, that all requires like some form of agency, and that which means that like a lot of these things like are kind of like fundamentally require agents in a lot of ways to exist at some point in the value chain. So I think like a lot of like the whole idea of DeFi being like Dino, like decentralized in name only, it's kind of predicated around that. Like it's because it is there's certain automated functions that might make it a more efficient method depending on how you do it. But the reality of it is that they're all dependent upon in some form these trusted sources, in which case all the other decentralization that you work so hard to create is kind of moot if you have one trusted source that kind of exists within that system. So it's like you can operate in a trustless way for payments with Bitcoin and Lightning, but once you want to get into the financial side of things, now we're going to have software applications that are going to let you do new things with your money and earn forms of interest and legitimate ways of lending that create value in the world and aren't just like token issuance supply going up. But I think that like when you have legitimate forms of capital allocation software that's enabling that for people, it's going to be much more efficient. It's going to create a lot more information transparency, and it's going to disintermediate quite a bit of it. But I don't think you're ever going to fully get away from completely disintermediating the process of like broader finance on top of Bitcoin. I don't think that that's how it's going to work. And, of course, there might be a lot of things that I'm missing about that. But in any event, it's going to work like that for the next like 30, 40, 50 years, probably. I can't see anything that would really change that in the near term. So the way that I view it, it's like I think we're gonna have Bitcoin. I think we're gonna have Lightning for payments. I think we're gonna have some other cool innovations that really make the system way more efficient, competitive, and has transparent information. Um, but I don't see some sort of like decentralized financial economy where everybody's just doing everything peer to peer and there's no intermediaries ultimately emerging. And I think that's kind of the other like $1 trillion mistake. It was the developer Lloyd Fernier, who was recently working on the Fediman hackathon, made that point, and I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. He kind of referred to a lot of this as like $1 trillion mistake, and that's kind of the way I view it too.
So, like, I love what you had to say. There's a couple of thoughts I want to unpack, and I want to first go back though to the raising capital endlessly because I feel like that's just an endless cycle from the fiat game. And one of my favorite things about your perspective and your commentary just on society and what we see is, and especially from your book, is just we're not creative enough to fully break out of what we have previously built. We will just rebuild those same systems with the new tools that we get because we've historically done that through various iterations throughout society.
Mm,
So I totally agree with that perspective. And the one thing I kind of want to challenge on this idea of, well, we're going to eventually go away from these companies that are just raising capital endlessly until they eventually fall over or collapse. Unfortunately, like for the first time ever, Uber did post a profit. And now, like,
mm,
every single company that is following that business model actually has a scapegoat and a point to say, we are like Uber. There is
right,
that
right.
exit ramp in the future. So, does that pose more risk, or are you able, because as the days go on, there are more and more of these companies failing that you can kind of start poking the hole of like, Uber's an anomaly. Like that's not getting replicated by this bullshit,
Mm-hmm,
whatever
mm-hmm.
they're offering.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't want to like position it as if I think that these forms of financing aren't I mean that's the nature of financing any company, right? Like eventually there's a timeline of profitability, and you have to raise capital until you can get there and sell ownership to get to that point. And it's just a question of what's the extent of doing that. And there are some things, I guess the point that I was trying to make in terms of like the process of like continuously raising capital is like, I mean, these were just circular economies that emerged within crypto that were based on, the idea that a token had value, and had a monetary value and inflating that value. And they were based on artificial demand. There wasn't really like an underlying economic yield that was being created in the real world. And a lot of that's because you need to have real world goods and services being created for people. And most of these things were just departed from that. They were just tokens sloshing around and trading. So like this whole idea of like DeFi and like, staking and repackaging and turning tokens into more derivatives of other versions of tokens and flipping those around. It was just a zero sum game, where eventually, kind of moving money around from different people. And it wasn't, its value increased with the perception that it had value when nobody understood it. And then, it crashes back down. It still has value. Like it's not that there's no value associated with it. It's just that I think that there's a lot of, I guess it's not being like totally clear on that point, but I guess like there's a lot of trade-offs with how you could express that. Like, what was something that was valuable, right? Like a Uniswap. Like a Uniswap was a pretty valuable thing. That worked pretty well. There's still like, foundation control and all of that. The question kind of becomes, is it ever going to get to the point where it's decentralized enough? And maybe that could emerge on top of like a Bitcoin. layered system, and maybe it's better off just being centralized. Like I mean, a lot of those exchanges, they're cool because you get more access, but in terms of like the performance of those exchanges, like I would never want to trade on those. The only reason I would is because I get access to tokens that wouldn't be listed on like a Coinbase or something, and I wanted to trade those tokens. But outside of that, it's like, FTX was a lot better. You had a much better order book with much lower latency on a centralized type exchange. So it's like really that was the only value add of that. And so the point is like I didn't see like a ton of like real world um economies that were being formed by it. I saw interesting ideas that I think ultimately, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when something goes wrong, and that's kind of human nature to do that in a lot of circumstances. But there are interesting ideas that emerged out of it, and a lot of horrible things happened. It was probably a pretty big net cost, but nonetheless, like I kind of viewed a lot of that as like a outsourced R&D for the future of like Bitcoin, um, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But I see the idea of like these needing a lot of capital and needing to create uh, a business through scale as being something that's valuable. Has the fiat system taken that too far? Probably. We've been so flush with capital. When you think about like the epitome of it was like the SoftBank Vision Fund. Like I referenced that in my book, and because they were primarily Saudi reserve financed, and they were the biggest private equity fund in the world or ever raised at the time. And dude, they were just like, there was like all these stories getting into the news about founders who were just getting money crammed down their throat by this fund because these guys were just too big to be financing guys who need 200 grand, and they're like, no, take 2 million. They're like, I don't even know what to do with 2 million in this idea right now. We just need 200 grand. And they were just like forcing money down people's throats and creating these kind of like absurd ideas. I mean, investing in like all these ridiculous apps that I don't think are really what's needed, right? Like it's kind of funny to think about that. Sorry, I'm just rambling at this point, but like I think it's funny to think
you talk for the whole hour, so don't you dare.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like if you like take a step back and you just kind of like think about the world, it's just like we have all these supply shortages, and there's all these things that like prices are going up in like basic commodities for people, and there's all these things that people actually want and need that would make our lives better. And then you have these funds that are like shoving money into some app that's going to walk your dog for you or something. And like, there's just all these things that don't have a ton of value. And that's all the malinvestment that like, the Austrian economists would refer to it. And that's certainly there. Nonetheless, though, it's not like, I think Uber is a very valuable company. I think that there are valuable things that emerged from the fiat economy and this like growth at all costs type mindset. I just think that it may not have been the optimal way to spend the past few decades in the slower. There's an optimal level of capital investment and assuming risk within an economy, and balancing that from a completely constrained economy where like nobody's investing and everybody's saving. There's some sort of natural market balance that occurs, and what we've done is we've pushed that balance all the way to the extreme of grow at all costs, create stupid companies, let bankruptcy happen. Unless you're a major bank, then you get bailed out. I mean, or a bank today.
That's just the formula for success in this country. It's like, so long as you do that song and dance of we only work if you keep printing money, then they allow you to succeed. But if your business tries to disrupt that, like God forbid, you just try to make money for the sake of making money.
Yeah.
So we're at the halfway point. I want to unpack something else, but this is late night TV. I promise you some fun, silly questions. So, first things first, you've said it enough times, so I have to ask it now. What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to go with egg, man. I eat a lot of eggs every day. So,
ooh, okay.
Yeah, it sounds right to me.
Okay. I would agree with that because I would say there were eggs long before there were chickens.
Right. It feels right that there would be eggs first.
Right. I kind of feel like if you ever say chicken, you're just stupid, but what do I know? All right. My next one for you is this. Genuinely, have you ever been to the red light district?
No, I haven't.
Would you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go anywhere.
All right. My final question is, while you are a mile high above me right now, I am absolutely high as a fucking kite compared to you, my friend. What did you smoke tonight?
Oh, dude, I just took a little edible. I'm kind of an edible guy.
Okay. What is
Yeah.
like? Are you gummy, chocolates, baked goods?
Dude, yeah, we've got these half and half CBD
Uh
and
huh.
THC, so it's like a 5 and 5 milligram of each.
Okay, nice.
And dude, like I have always been like a super lightweight with weed. I'll take like a quarter of that, and I'm kind of like chilling at that point. So that's kind of the routine.
Nice. But you don't really get like high from that because it's got enough CBD to kind of like keep you in check. No.
Well, I mean, I don't know, dude. I feel like I get high from it, but wait, what does that mean? Does like CBD like offset the THC?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, like if you're ever in a situation where you actually just smoke and you're like, I'm getting too paranoid and like start bugging out a little bit, if you actually just take either smoke or eat an edible of pure CBD, it will help you quickly relax and negate some of those more intense high effects.
Mm.
Fun stoner fact of the night.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably why I like it. Okay. My beef with like getting like baked is I don't like losing my ability to think. And I'm
Fair.
like, whenever it like, don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the times I've been stoned out of my mind before in like college and shit. But like, me being 29 years old now, I'm kind of like, yeah, if I'm gonna like do that, I just want to like kind of want to cruise enough to make music sound really good, but I can still have a coherent conversation.
Fair. I mean, I'm hoping this conversation has been coherent enough for you.
Yeah, I don't know. We got people over here like, what is he saying in the comments? I don't know, man.
I mean, hey, you're not the dumbass who pressed go live while your camera was off and left it on for 7 minutes.
Dude, it was funny too because I saw that and I was kind of like, I don't know how these things work, but are we
I
live?
no,
That
I
was
totally
thought
fucked
crossed
that
my
up.
mind. That's
I
so
literally
funny.
like, bro, I was about to say like I'm gonna step away and smoke this joint right now, and then we'll go live. Um, I will tell you what, I'll see you in Miami, right?
Yeah, man, I'll be down there.
Well, this is a reminder for everyone listening live. First off, smash the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching over on Twitter. I know there's a gang of you over there. I threw the link down below. Come join us over on YouTube because it's more fun over here. And come join us in Miami. Use promo code QQQ. You'll get 10% off. And I'll know and I'll smoke you out. I'll bring some edibles for you, Eric. But
Hell yeah, bro.
none with CBD.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing my book signing on Saturday at the conference. So
Will you
you got to
sign my
swing by.
iPad? Because that's where my copy of your book
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Totally.
I had to stop doing that after a while. I kept buying all my Bitcoin books on my actually it's my Amazon Fire Kindle, and I was like, dude, this doesn't work. Like, if I meet these people, I want them to sign the book. Like, this is pointless.
Right.
um, but yeah, use promo code QQQ, get 10% off of your ticket, and then I will bring joints for everyone who uses that promo code, and we will light up in Miami. But only if you use my promo code. Brent Droid, I'm looking at you. All right, should we get back to more serious matters like solving world hunger and mass global
Yeah,
Bitcoin adoption?
let's get serious. Let's get serious.
All right. Um, I have one more silly, but it alludes to a more serious topic. I have an award I meant to give out while I was working at Bitcoin Magazine, but
Ooh.
they literally fired me because I said I want to give this award. So I'm gonna give it live on air right now with you as my co-presenter. So the award is the best slogan of 2022. Okay. And the finalists for this are crypto, DeFi, HODL, and I don't know whatever else you want, but like between those three, the champion that I crown is genuinely DeFi, and I think that that slogan, like whoever in some PR firm came up with this as like a quick, snappy
Yeah,
little way,
yeah,
like, dude, that person better have gotten the biggest bonus that they could retire on and never worry about work, because
yeah,
4 letters convinced hundreds of billions of dollars of actual value to be dumped into these random shit coins under the guise of this is DeFi. Whereas us fucking Bitcoiners are sitting there worrying about laser eyes and shit. And then these fucking crypto nonsense things go hire a publicist and they come up with the best fucking slogan since just do it. So my challenge to you is earlier before we took our little like funsy break when you went on your original rant about the VC stuff, one of the things you said was that, DeFi will eventually, fade away. I actually think it won't. And I unfortunately think that because that slogan is so fucking perfect that it literally defines Bitcoin, but for some reason we in Bitcoin didn't think of it, and they
yeah, yeah.
they co-opted it. Like we
Hmm.
don't want to be associated with DeFi. And like it would be more harmful than helpful for Bitcoin, I think, to get associated with that. But I don't think it goes away. I'd love your take on just what I've shared. Are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just
yeah.
ramblings of a high man, or like am I
No,
do I
dude,
maybe
I agree, man. I think yeah, it's a good point that it's probably strong enough to where it probably won't go away, and it'll be used as like some form of misnomer, which I think is kind of true of a lot of things in this industry. Um, so it's possible. I don't even know what to call things because I'm kind of like, if I'm going to say something in a, like the intellectually correct way or what's logically follows to describe something,
it's
like,
late night TV? This ain't supposed to be intellectually honest or correct.
yeah, yeah. Well, like that, but like that's my point is like, you just end up losing people. Like people do want that kind of shit, and it's just like, yeah, it's a good slogan. It worked in a lot of ways. It'll probably stick around. There's probably going to be a lot of things in Bitcoin that are going to be used that they're going to use that to describe. Um, and I don't know, in terms of like, I feel like if there's one thing that I'll catch myself on, it's like I feel like I'll lose like perspective on what most people are familiar with. Like, 5-10 years from now, when a bunch of other people have come into this industry, and like, a lot of like the big people in traditional finance are all like, okay, this is the next big thing, and they're all investing. um, then they'll probably be as familiar with some of these concepts that we're talking about right now. But I feel like, most people, even people that are like smart people, kind of work in peripheral areas, like aren't that familiar with a lot of aspects of this industry that we all are. So like maybe a lot of these things do go away. But yeah, it's true. It could definitely stick around. It's easy for a lot of people to understand. It's catchy. It's got some strong brand recognition at this point. Um, but while we're on this, the other thing that I think is, I get why it exists, but like the word permissionless for Bitcoin being used, it's like we just made that word up, right? And it's a good word, but it's like, why didn't we just say autonomous? Like, because I like I try to use that word, and I'm just like, dude, he came up with permissionless.
I'm still so butthurt. I'm like, I finally, it hit me the other day, like, oh, I get it. Because I always used to say, I'm like, why do they call it DeFi? Like, it's a centralized entity. Like, it's not decentralized. And then it dawned on me the other day reading a crypto newsletter. I know. Kill me. Kick me out of Bitcoin Twitter. Oh my God. He doesn't have laser eyes. He's not a big believer. I know. But it dawned on me they think it's decentralized from the central banking system, but it's like you just took a pig, put a wig on it, and told me that it's a human.
Yeah, totally. And like that's what it boils down to is like, what are you ultimately communicating to people? I get it. Like, let's get into semantics, right? It's like, okay, decentralized, that doesn't mean that it's permissionless or autonomous. It just means that it is relatively more decentralized than something that is more centralized to it. So if you compare these systems to a centralized company, then they're decentralized. It's a relative term. So like from that perspective, you can make that argument. Now, um if you call it a distributed system, then that would be the proper nomenclature to define it as something that is decentralized to the point at which it's an autonomous network or something. And all these are, pretty theoretical ideas, but nonetheless, it's kind of like that. I'd say like that's how you could semantically break it down. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, yeah, like these things are more decentralized. It's not necessarily a lie, but what it's communicating to all these people is that they can put their money in this thing and nobody controls it. And that's what I'm like, that's like the thing that's not cool is everybody just got totally misled around what was actually going on with a lot of these technologies and still are to this day.
I think that helps set the table perfectly to transition now to the current events that you know nothing about, as you already admit to our audience. But I think it's fair for me to, I didn't clickbait you all into thinking Alex McShane was joining me or Brian Armstrong. I did want to talk about the latest around this whole SEC Coinbase debacle. Um, let's let's unpack this, and what I'll give you the update on very simply is that the SEC and Coinbase keep going back and forth, and off the heels of the Wells notice that the SEC provided Coinbase has now come out and they've essentially said like, dude, we sent you guys a letter asking for clarification, and instead you're saying like we're breaking the law. Please clarify instead of just antagonizing us. And we're seeing a lot of action out of the SEC. There's a lot of pressure on regulators to come out and do something. What I want to know is, will Maxine Waters have to return FTX's money, i.e., consumer funds?
Mm. Yeah, man, I really have like no idea. Like, honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, I kind of zoned out halfway into
All right.
that
Let me shift it 10 degrees a different direction.
Okay.
Um, there's a lot more pressure coming out of DC than we've ever seen, obviously,
Hmm.
because of so many different things and a lot of fingers being pointed at crypto at large for the downfall of Silicon Valley Bank and this impending collapse of First Republic. Um, do you think at a certain point in the near future, regulators are going to have to take action? And in your opinion, what would be worst case scenario?
Um, I mean, look, like I feel as if that's happening, right? It's just like, so it's not as much like there's regulators, right? And then there's like um, ways that the government can actually just prevent the functioning of the system. So, like, SEC is a regulator, CFTC is a regulator. Um, they have certain powers with which they can implement certain policy. They've been going after some of these like smaller projects because they know they can get wins and they can set precedent with that. They can't like go after Coinbase or anything yet. They don't have the firepower to do those kind of things. So like I don't even know if it's as much the regulators that are like the biggest concern, at least in the near term, without like Congress giving them more power. But I'm not saying that it's not a big concern, but it's like the banking system kind of being weaponized against crypto, like the Nick Carter Operation Choke Point 2.0 thesis. Like, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And that's something that it can kind of circumvent a lot of legal frameworks in order for them to like implement some of that, which we witnessed. And yeah, so like I think that that's something that I'm probably a bit more concerned about in terms of like prospectively what I expect. Um, I think that we're going to see it come in more and more, and I don't. I'm getting more and more skeptical of whether or not the U.S. is going to be uh, a good environment for this industry to grow in the coming years. And like with a lot of what we're going to be looking at with like the VC fund, for example, it's going to be investing in companies that are outside of the US. I feel like that's kind of and obviously you get that from owning Bitcoin as well, because I think a lot of the demand and a lot of the buyers and a lot of the growth is probably going to start coming out of other countries, unless something changes, which is totally possible. Things could pivot pretty quickly. Um, what was it? Robert Kennedy Jr. went off on that Twitter thread against like CBDCs and shit. Like, who knows what
Yeah,
could happen? Like Trump got elected. Like, I don't know what the fuck's gonna
bro,
happen. The world's
I'm an
crazy right now.
RFK simps. I simp for RFK Jr. I'm so pro
Yeah,
pro Kennedy.
and I'm not a huge like politics dude. I generally am never like super on board, but dude, the guy's been saying some cool shit on Twitter. I was kind of like, all right, like I might vote for this dude. That's kind of cool.
If I like honestly, because DeSantis just annoys me with how much he like stokes the flames of the culture war. Like some of his
Yeah.
policies are great, some of his policies are absolutely moronic, and then just 90% of what he says is genuinely just stupid and trying to like garner a reaction. And then I heard something recently which was like, if you the more time you spend with him, the less and less impressive he becomes. Like he's a great first meeting, but he's an awful third meeting. So I was like, this will be really fun to like realize on the campaign trail very quickly.
Yep.
Um, who would be I, like that answer's too easy. So let me ask this. Does Lizzie Warren's crypto army scare you in any way?
No, no, not at all.
Interesting. Do you
Yeah.
think because she just is it why?
Dude, I just think she's too much of a nothing burger. Like I feel like she's
Is she a decoy to you?
she's how would I guess I haven't like thought through this that much, but like I guess I would say like dude, I just don't think she's like that powerful. I think that she has some degree of influence and she wants to push for this policy. But in terms of like, who's ultimately going to be influencing the, vast majority of this country. And I guess I don't know, like I don't follow this that much. I can't imagine that she's popular enough to, create any sort of credible campaign against crypto. I think she has power. I think it's like not something to be, scoffing at, but I I think that things could change pretty quickly, and there's a lot of other politicians who support it. And I think like the bottom up movement between state level politicians trying to support a lot of this is also going to be a pretty big defense against any sort of like federal policies that try to attack it. But I don't know. I don't really know enough to say, but I'm not as concerned about her.
Okay.
You
Now,
tell me, man. You seem like you got an opinion on this one.
I just I think a part of what she does is to more of what she does is to appease her donor class than it is to actually garner any votes in any way. And I think
Yeah.
that like to your point that she doesn't have enough power to push forward this legislation. I do agree with that, but she has more power and influence than someone like Cynthia Lummis. And that is, I think, concerning enough for me to pay attention to what she does and says and who supports what she does and says, because those people will flatly vote against Lummis's Bitcoin bill, in my opinion. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a crypto bill. It could literally be, it could actually, if Lummis were to work with Warren and pass anti crypto legislation in it, it would be more hurtful for Bitcoin. Because it just, like, there's no realm of possibility that the banks that donate and fund Elizabeth Warren, because she has certain donors from Wall
Hmm.
Street, they will never allow her to support or even openly suggest that Bitcoin is a viable thing for the future because it hurts them too much.
I agree. I think that that's definitely a line of thinking around it. I also think that there.
Tell me you think I'm dumber in the nicest way possible.
No, no, I mean that like I literally mean that like because like right, you can look at a scenario. There's a lot of ways you can form a narrative on it, right? Like that's definitely a path that it could go. I think that there's a few different ways. Maybe it could also like to your point, like we win not from really having pro crypto legislation being passed. We just win from not having negative crypto legislation being passed. So, like, does she have enough power to push a bunch of anti crypto shit through Congress? Like, she has to deal with Congress and the Senate and, like, and then whoever's in the executive office. So, like, that is a lot more than just her and her donors. The one thing, though, is like, I don't know who her donors are. Do you know any off the top of your head?
Ooh, ooh, this is one of my favorite exercises to do. So this is very Googleable, but here's a fun one for you. So
Okay.
Elizabeth Warren is the queen of we need to, you know, waive student loan debt, which I'm still waiting for my student loan debt to get waived. So yes, bias in the story. However, I'm a full supporter of the notion of allowing for student loan debt to be declared bankrupt. Like I can't say like,
Mm,
hey, I can't make these payments. Like that debt just if I die, it gets passed on. It doesn't go away.
hmm
So notice very carefully, Elizabeth Warren does not say we need to allow them to declare bankruptcy. She only says we need to forgive student loan debt. Now, why is that? Well, some of Elizabeth Warren's largest donors include the UC school system,
hmm
Harvard, and of all schools, the University of Texas.
Whoa.
So literally, you just type look, donors, top contributors on opensecrets.org. And I have University of California, Alphabet, Harvard, Apple, Emily's List, Amazon, the US government, Microsoft, City of New York, University of Washington, State of California, Kaiser Permanente, Walt Disney, AT&T, Stanford, University of Michigan, City University of New York, the University of Texas, Columbia, and IBM Corp are some of her largest donors from the 2020 election cycle.
Damn. She's got a lineup. She's got. Okay. So, going back to like, okay. So, who were like the major banks in any of that? Because yeah, it seemed like mostly tech and education, right?
Right. But most of these schools that are donating to her are donating through their pension, not pension. Oh my God. Why am I spacing on it?
Oh,
Endowment.
their endowment. Yeah.
Their endowment. So they are donating as financial institutions to a degree, but as I'm going through hers, surprisingly, I'm not seeing I pulled up industries, business services, but strange real estate at 13, insurance at 16. It's more healthcare for her. Healthcare and education
Mm,
seem to be her largest donor pools.
yeah.
Interesting.
Student loans and free shit.
I'm not understanding this. Does she
Hmm.
just really hate crypto?
Dude, it's got to just be like her boomer voter base or something. Like that's the only thing I can think of. And she, it's just a numbers thing, dude. Like a lot of people, crypto got a bad reputation. It had the fraud associated with it. I don't think it's like she really cares about crypto. I think it's that we had all these negative things happen in crypto this year, and she's like, "This is a really cool campaign I can get behind." Like me and Peter McCormack were having this conversation one of the last times I was on, because I like started off with I was like, "Dude, Elizabeth Warren is just like the shittiest sociopath ever," and he was just like, "I actually disagree. I don't even think she's like." That shitty. She's just like the most standard politician ever. She does everything by her advisor. She has no opinion of her own. And she just like makes all of her comments based on what the numbers say she should do and say. And like that's probably what all of her strategies are being based around. And I was kind of like, yeah, I guess that could make sense. That probably adds up. Um,
You know who's perfected that strategy though? Like
mm,
to your point, like you're probably on to something with Liz Warren, but Ted Cruz. literally like the second Ron DeSantis signs that anti-CBDC law, the very next day he comes out and he's like, "We're doing the same thing in Texas." Rah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then like Lummis comes out pro Bitcoin, all the Bitcoiners supporters
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
nowhere. Ted Cruz like, "Hey, this Bitcoin thing's really cool, guys. Yeah, yeah. Wink,
yeah.
wink. No judge. Yeah, vote for me, Ted Cruz."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and he was pumping Batia's book too, I think, for a little while, which was kind of badass.
That is pretty dope. Although, like,
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, like I couldn't think of a worse spokesperson than Ted Cruz for anything.
Oh
Like,
yeah, that guy's a freak. I agree.
like I remember having this conversation in Bitcoin Magazine once, just being like, "Do we invite Ted Cruz to the conference?" I was like, "Dude, we become just like every the narrative of Bitcoin is like a conservative chokehold. Like, just becomes so validated with that one person being there."
Dude,
Um,
no, it's totally true, man. I agree.
all right,
Dude, did you ever see that video of it's so long ago. I might even be botching this, but dude, there
watch
was
it.
some sort of video that I swear back in college I saw of like Ted Cruz that leaked. It was like some got on video of him like when he was like in college or something. He was like really young. And he was just saying some like psychopath shit. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be in politics. I don't know, like some sort of shit along the lines of like I'm going into politics to like control people or something. You should see, yeah, we should see if we can
I
find this video.
was just googling.
Dude, it was pretty wild. Like I kind of remember being like, oh damn, this guy was just like a psychopath.
All right, I think I have it up. We're gonna watch this right now.
Sweet. I hope this is it because this is gonna take me back. Yeah, I think this is it.
Aspiration. Is that like sweat on my butt? No, no. Oh, I see. What you want me to do, what I want to do in life. Well, my aspiration is to, I don't know, be in a teen film like that guy who played Horatio. You know, he was in Malibu Bikini Beach Shop. Well, other than that, take over the world domination, rule everything, rich, powerful, that sort of stuff.
Mr. Cruz, you think Ted's gonna rule the world one day?
I hope not.
Knew I remembered that right.
What the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah. How crazy was
What? All right, so Ted Cruz admitted in college that he wants to rule the world, and then somehow the people. I gotta call my buddies in Texas after this. Oh my!
that? Yeah, it's crazy, right? Which is like, of course, that's assumed of any politician. Like that's what I start off with is that's what's going through their head, but and that's what I end with is that's what's going
I
through
mean,
their head.
you almost have to like appreciate the fact that he like I told you I'm gonna try to take over the world. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, I respect it. It's a free country.
You can aspire to whatever you want, but
Yeah, if you can make it unfree, like you made it unfree, you did do it.
I like I don't know. I try to not be too much of a dick now, but like Ted Cruz just brings it out in me. You want to know what my Zoom background used to be for a while?
Yes.
I used to have a picture that I found online that someone photoshopped of it was the January 6th people in the Capitol building. And they photoshopped the guy who's walking out with Nancy Pelosi's like stand that she speaks in front of.
Yeah.
They photoshopped Ted Cruz's face and then a giant fucking martini glass or a margarita glass when he went down to Cancun.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I swear to God, when we were having the conversation with Ted Cruz, and I told my dad, I was like, Dad, if I meet Ted Cruz, you know what I'm gonna do? He's like, just shake his hand and take the picture, man. He's like, don't. I was like, you know what I'm gonna do, right? He's like, what are you gonna do? I was like, I'm gonna whisper in his ear, how was Cancun, bitch?
You like Cancun, man?
I mean, yeah, I could talk to you for days about why Ted Cruz is a bad spokesperson for Bitcoin, but I will literally just leave it at look at how he was a spokesperson for himself, his family, and his wife when he was running for president. And then the moment Donald Trump said, Yo, your wife ugly, he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to shut up now and back away.
All right.
Like, imagine someone's going to talk shit about Bitcoin, and that's the spineless bastard that you want defending Bitcoin in DC. Okay.
Right.
That sounds moronic. I'm going to stick with Senator Lummis, but I'm gonna do me. You do you, my friends. All right, we got like maybe 5 minutes if you'll bear with me for me to ask.
Hit me.
I didn't ask, and I always start the episode with this. So, when was the actual first time you ever heard about Bitcoin, and what did you originally think? And I'm looking for that like skeptical, like you brushed it off story. Because we all
Just
have.
like it was funny because I brushed it off and ended up taking it seriously kind of in a short amount of time. Well, that's not true. I'll just start it off with the first time I heard about it was buying fake IDs in college from China.
Nice.
And yeah, we just
What
like, I don't know, I
state? What
paid
state?
like 200 Bitcoin for some Connecticut. In Arizona was
Oh,
another one. Yeah.
ooh. I had an Arizona
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, Arizona was like the most common one. I think it was like the easiest or whatever to do. It was kind of amazing how shitty they were too, and how they always worked. Only got
Dude,
it taken once.
I used it in Arizona. Although I was at U of A, so it was kind of like, yeah, no shit, it's gonna work at U of A.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, dude, I love U of A. One of my best buddies went there, and
I didn't go there. I was just visiting.
well, yeah, I went down to
I'm smarter
visit,
than
and
that.
it was a blast. Yeah, I know, right, dude? Those guys don't do anything at that
No.
college.
Dude, I
It was like
literally
insane.
I was visiting my cousin and I went to the library to like do some work because like I had some shit I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had to ask him all of his roommates. They had no idea where the fucking library was.
Oh yeah, dude. No, nobody does school there. They just
No, it
literally
was
get fucked
empty.
up, give
The
them
whole
money.
thing
Yeah,
was empty.
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I was like, damn, it's a good time.
So you sent 200 Bitcoin for an ID.
Yeah, it was like 200 or something. Got the ID, and then it was within. I guess it was like a year later in my economics class. It started to pop up in the news right around then. I think that was like my junior year or whatever. And that's when I was kind of like following it, and I was just like, reading the stuff that I was learning in college, and applying that too with under my like basic finance education that I had back then. One of my professors wanted us to like all write a prompt on what we thought about Bitcoin and whether or not like it was valuable, and I concluded in my prompt I was like, it's a speculative investment, with no fundamental value. Which like based on like the financial framework that you're taught about how to like value an asset, it's like, yeah, that's how you think about it. There's no like, nobody's like teaching kids about like monetary history. And there was like one part of one of my money and banking class in economics where we gave it a cursory review in one chapter of like what are the functions of money, and like what are the properties of money, and we kind of were just like, yeah, this is old, we all know that, we kind of moved past it. And they're also kind of like different. It's also funny too. It's kind of like how so how like the Bible is kind of like rewritten over time, like depending on what religion you are or whatever, it's just a different translation into whatever you want to hear for that particular instance. And it's very, if you like go back to like original translations of these books, it's like a very different book than what people are reading today. And it's kind of like that. I feel a bit like the properties of money are kind of defined differently in a lot of ways, which is kind of funny. But anyways, yeah, we were going into all that kind of stuff, and I was just like, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy into Bitcoin until then I graduated, and it was around then that Bitcoin was it was going on this rally towards 1,000 back then. And that's when I was kind of like at that point, like, oh, it's must be pretty interesting technology. But I still like when I thought about it, I was like, there's a lot of interesting technology out there where it's like, I got this, I was taking the CFA, like I was pretty deep into the finance world, and like I had no idea how to value it. And it's like, if I don't know how to value something, there's no way I can really like invest in it. And I just didn't have that mindset yet. And once it clicked for me that this thing was an alternative to central banking, which I like read in some blog post at some point, I can't even remember what it was. That's when I was like, oh shit. Like, because back then, dude, I was like researching into like, I knew the problem. And I was looking into, me and one of my buddies I worked with, we were kind of just like, as outside of work, we're just like looking into ways to like short Japanese equity markets just because of all the crazy, quantitative easing that they were like, they buy, I can't remember what the stat was, but it was like some absurd, like 40 or 50% of their stock markets just owned by the government printing money. And where I was trying to like research into like, okay, so how does this end? And it was right around that time when I kind of realized like, oh, here's the real purpose of Bitcoin. This is the bubble that does cause all that to end, or the prick that pops a bubble to make that all end. So yeah, that was kind of like the story of like my reasoning. And then after that, I just kind of became obsessed with it. And then I like, started reading into like crypto and shit for a while. And I was like, oh, so it's like Bitcoin, but it's just does stuff better. And then that's like a whole, spider web of shit that you can get caught up into, where it's like I was reading about all the different consensus algorithms, POS, delegated POS, I can't even remember what the fuck they're called anymore at this point. But I was just reading into all that kind of other shit, and it took me probably a year to come back around to Bitcoin. I was never like, there were like points in time where I was kind of like, yeah, I was like talking to friends, and I was like, I believed crypto is valuable. But I was never like sold on what made it like truly foundationally different. And it took me a few years, I think, until I was kind of like realized the reality of it. But yeah.
My dude, we are at that time.
Oh, dude, we are overtime.
We are overtime. I'm a call it, but I do want to give you the opportunity to tell everyone about my favorite Bitcoin book written by you truly, and whatever else you got cooking up, how they can keep up with none other than Eric Yakes, spelled like thick.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter. I wrote the book, The Seventh Property. Check it out. And, high level, it was just something that I thought was the right, covered all the aspects of Bitcoin that are valuable for people with more of a finance background, but ended up resonating with a lot of different people. I tried to keep things just really simplified. I tried to keep things really measured, and I didn't want to get like too theoretical with anything, and just kind of look at Bitcoin from the perspective of like, okay, here's what we know. And making the arguments for why it's valuable based off that. So check that out. I'll be down at Miami. I'll be doing a book signing that Saturday. What time am I doing that? I'll be doing that. It's going to be like by the Bitcoin Magazine store. And I'll be doing that at 9 a.m. So that'll be 11 a.m. 11 a.m. Yeah. Come check it out.
11 a.m. Miami time. Bring your copy of The Seventh Property. You better have read it. Eric's going to quiz you with 3 questions. I'm going to be standing next to him as a bodyguard, smoking a joint and making sure.
Yeah, we'll be smoking a spliff.
Oh, yes, my dude. This is why I love you, bro. All right. That's going to do it for another